MLB 10 The Show was a special game. Critics unanimously praised it upon release, with some going as far as calling it the absolute pinnacle of baseball gaming, and a video game worth learning a new sport for if you weren't already familiar with baseball. It really was that good. It was baseball perfection. Today, MLB The Show 23 is a solid sports game, but not a great one. Many would argue that it's the best sports game currently on the market, but in this competition-lacking era, does that really mean much? It's not a very high bar to cross. While the game currently has a rich franchise mode, an awesome stadium creator tool, great visuals, and excellent presentation, it also suffers from gameplay scripting issues, microtransactions that give players a competitive advantage in Diamond Dynasty, and the overall game has started to stagnate, with the most recent titles feeling more similar than usual. That said, the microtransactions could be worse, as Diamond Dynasty, a mode similar to 2K's My Team or EA's Ultimate Team, is the most forgiving towards free-to-play players. And unlike 2K's My Career, there are no microtransactions found in the Road to the Show career mode. But with all that said, it's tough to justify any microtransactions in a fully priced video game. I fundamentally disagree with the concept, but sadly, this is the state of the entire industry right now. MLB 10 The Show is from a different era, one in which there were plenty of sports games to choose from, and one in which online gaming was first becoming mainstream, before companies got the idea of releasing unfinished games at full price and patching them up later. Relative to its era, there isn't a better MLB The Show title than 10. Back in the day, MLB games were booming, with EA's excellent MVP Baseball series competing with many others, including 2K's series and of course Sony's. In 2005, 2K got revenge on EA for buying the exclusive NFL license by buying the exclusive third-party MLB license. This killed off the MLB licensed MVP Baseball series, forcing EA to switch to a collegiate baseball game, and left just MLB 2K and MLB The Show, which was still licensed because it was a first-party title. The two games competed for years, and while MLB 2K had some cool features, it was never quite as good as MLB The Show. But its existence helped push Sony to make the best possible game to continue leading the market, and also to sell more PlayStation consoles. MLB 10 was the culmination of all those years of competition, and this was when MLB 2K's fate was all but sealed. You can watch my video on the fall of MLB 2K if you want to learn more about that series. MLB 10 The Show might just be the greatest MLB The Show title ever made, and I could also see an argument for it being the greatest baseball title ever made as well. It's undoubtedly an all-time classic sports game, and even today, it still holds up well. Let's take a deeper look at what made this game so great, because in my opinion, MLB 10 The Show was a masterpiece. MLB 10 The Show featured an impressive level of attention to detail. From the presentation, to the commentary team, to the players on the field, everything looks and feels like a real MLB game. Give up a home run and watch as your catcher throws his mask off in frustration. Zoom in on your pitcher's face and watch as his face changes as he throws the ball. Give up multiple intentional walks in a row and Dave Campbell, the color commentator, will get pissed off. So pissed off that he will audibly pick up his belongings and leave the booth, slamming the door behind him. You might even see a beach ball land on the diamond and disrupt the game, or a streaker might run onto the field, and the game will show your players shielding their eyes. Most of this is found in the latest MLB The Show titles too, but for a game from 2010, this was absolutely crazy. Even today, no other sports game goes that deep when it comes to the little things. It's obvious that this game's developers truly have passion for baseball, and weren't just there to build their resume like the developers at other studios today. These details, along with some gameplay additions and changes, were part of the reason this game was so well received. But they weren't the only reason. Franchise mode was taken to the next level in this game. After a few years of focusing mostly on gameplay and graphics, this was the year San Diego studio brought an insane amount of depth to the game modes. For the first time, you could control all 30 teams in franchise mode with more options and settings than ever before. For example, you have to play by nearly every league rule, such as the Rule 5 draft, setting prices to make enough revenue to pay your players' salaries, promote minor league players, help injured players recover, and a whole lot more. It's insanely in-depth, but if any of it feels too complicated, you can have the CPU take over and automatically handle anything you want. There's a whole in-game transaction handbook, providing a list of every event in the season, from arbitration to recoverable waiver rules to supplemental picks. Anything the casual baseball fan may not be aware of is there. Unlike most sports games, franchise in the show was almost identical to running a real team, but in a good way. And again, you could do all of this for every single team at once if you wanted and run your own MLB universe. There is more depth in this game mode than you would find anywhere else besides something like Football Manager or Out of the Park Baseball. Every possible stat is tracked over the years as well. League history, awards, everything. Pull out a checklist of everything you'd ever want in a franchise mode, and this game will check every box and then some. The only downside is that you're limited to 2 teams when trading, and the AI teams make some strange decisions when signing or trading players. But if you play sports games enough, you'll find these flaws in literally every sports game, even the modern ones. Road to the Show, the career mode, was in its 4th year, and you'd create a player and work your way up from the AA to the majors. In 10, new drills were added to practice fielding and pitching that helped improve your player, and every choice you make in games was tracked throughout the season, along with all of your stats. It was a super solid career mode that was very in-depth for 2010. Keep in mind that 2K had just released My Player for the first time in NBA 2K10, so career modes weren't that detailed or in-depth yet, making this game stand out even more back then. As I mentioned earlier, gameplay, while similar to 08 and 09, took some steps forward, resulting in some of the most well-rounded simulation baseball gameplay you can find. Besides, without great gameplay, the ceiling of how good a sports game can be is seriously capped. It's the most important part. Batting and pitching were relatively the same as it was in previous titles. Aim with the left stick and try and hit the ball in the right zone, and if you flick the right stick before the pitch, you can hit a grounder or a fly ball. You could also try and guess the pitch. When pitching, you choose the location of where you want to throw, and then use a meter to try and get the power and accuracy where you want it, although pitcher fatigue would increase the difficulty. Pretty standard stuff, especially if you're familiar with recent The Show titles, but it all worked extremely well. The new addition to gameplay came with the pickoff game. You could hold the left trigger and tap the base icon for a quick tossback, or double tap it for a quick pickoff attempt, or hold it down for a misdirection fake. And the game's AI was fantastic for the time as well, resulting in a simulation-like experience. But what tied it all together was the presentation. The audio was top-notch, from the bat cracking sounds, to the crowd heckling you, to the commentary team. As I mentioned earlier, the commentary team would react strongly to your play, and if you made boneheaded decisions one after another, you could really rile them up. You could choose between a broadcast-style presentation format or a real-time player-focused presentation format that had no commentary or replays and made the game feel more like you were an actual player on the diamond. You had plenty of options, a common theme for this game. In-game highlights, stat overlays, and replays all came naturally in the broadcast format, and visually, you could see players react to different scenarios realistically. The game really felt alive. Sometimes players could even argue with each other, and rivalries would form in-game. Even your very own players could visually turn on each other. There was even a movie maker feature where you could piece together footage from different angles from games, and then upload it to YouTube straight from your console. For 2010, that was just insane. There was also a PlayStation 2 and PSP version of this game, but today I've only been going over the most popular version on the PlayStation 3. MLB 10 The Show was and still is a fantastic video game and a baseball fan's dream come true. and it successfully replicated everything you would love about the sport. If you could only pick one baseball video game to play for the rest of your life, you'd be more than satisfied with this one. Best-in-class gameplay, best-in-class franchise depth, and best-in-class presentation helped deliver us one of the greatest sports video games of all time. MLB 2K10 just couldn't compare, and after 2K13, Take-Two gave up on MLB games, and since then, only The Show has been around. Modern versions of MLB The Show are still good games, but I don't feel like they've matched the greatness of MLB 10 yet relative to my expectations. The Show 16 was probably the best game since, in my opinion. MLB 10 The Show transports you to an era when Sony was aiming to sell PlayStation consoles and destroy 2K by releasing the best possible exclusive MLB game year after year. And you'll have a hard time finding a better baseball game from that era. It was not just a great baseball game, or even just a great sports video game, but it was a great video game in general. And that made it a masterpiece. Thanks for watching.